going to click record and you can begin whenever you are ready.
Perfect. Let me just share the screen, which I think I haven't. Okay, so you should be able to see my presentation.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, welcome to my presentation to you all. Appreciate you being here. I'm definitely missing you all. I'm definitely missing the place but so we're here. So this morning I'm going to talk about something pretty simple, which is what are the main benefits of eating a plant-based diet, and then also the lifestyle. I added in some lifestyle essentials, which I think are going to be very vital. I really thought hard in terms of giving you the best tools that you can have available for you after you finish this 5-day retreat or so. And so with that in mind, let's just start. All right, so I'm gonna just start with a quick analogy here. I think we all learn a lot by stories, and Wizard of Oz, one of my most favorite movies. As you know, you probably all have seen it. And in it, Dorothy gets lost, and she is lost from her home in Kansas after a tornado happens. And so she sets up this journey because the only one solution she had, or they told her, that could get her back home was to follow the yellow brick road and find the wizard, because that was pretty much the only way where she could get herself back home. And just before I continue, can you see the presentation? But I'm guessing, but can you see me as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So you're seeing me as well in a small corner right there as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. So yeah, just in case. Okay, so yeah, as I was saying, as she thought that pretty much the only solution ever she had to get back to her home was to just find the wizard, because he was just a magician. He could get her back home. But then when she finds him, he reminds her she already had the solution in her own hands, actually in her own feet. So she had those red slippers, and all she had was to tap them 3 times and say there's no place like home, and she'd be back. And of course she did, and she got back home. And an interesting analogy that was in that movie presented was that the evil witch wanted her slippers, but she couldn't. There was something magical about them that she couldn't, as evil and as powerful as she couldn't just not touch her. And I think that an analogy here is that sometimes we think that our genes are that evil thing that we are doomed to be dominated, or that keeps us away from our better health. And that's actually not the case. Well, long story short is that, yeah, she eventually got back home, but the interesting thing is that she actually never left home. She was just in a dream. And sometimes conventions, and what I mean by conventions is like thinking that we need a magical supplement, or that we need a magical treatment, and we're actually, all we need is to wake up to our better health. And again, like I've said before, most, if not always, the simpler we go, the better. So literally, fruits and vegetables and eating a plant-based diet is that going back home moment we all need to learn more and more. Again, as cliche as it sounds, it's just the truth. So on with the presentation. I want to start out by talking about the blue zones. And if you can see, there's an image there talking about reverse engineering. And so what that means is that what I love about plant-based science and plant-based nutrition is that we're not out there. This never started about all us going out there and trying and seeing what works in general. We were already doing research in terms of overall populations, which were already so healthy that we just said, again, the phrase is reverse engineer. Well, what do they do? How do they eat? How do they sleep? how do they exercise, how do they move, and what the results they have. And so most of you might have heard about the blue zones, but in summary, if you have not, I highly recommend you check the Blue Zones, a book, and there's also a TED Talk. So over 10 years ago, these journalist, Dan Buettner, set out to discover what these places, the blue zones, have in common. So these are at least 5 cities in the world, spread throughout the whole world. Like you can see there, Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Icaria, Greece, Nicoya, Costa Rica, and Loma Linda, California. In all of these places, longevity is so significantly higher than in most developed countries that, of course, it prompted for them to do research. And so they found that the people that reach age 100 is actually 10 times the chances of you to get to 100 years old. It's actually 10 times greater than here in the US. And not only you reach 100, but these are folks that are very active and very fully independent at that. They're not reaching age 100 just in bedridden or anything like that at all. For example, in Icaria, Greece, 1 out of 3, 33% of the population actually make it into their 90s and very healthy. That's a very high percentage, actually. Furthermore, Icarians have about 20% lower rates of cancer, 50% lower rates of heart disease, and pretty much almost no dementia. And so what they found is that all these 5 places around the world have actually 9 things in common. Number one, they did moderate regular physical activity. Pretty much what's interesting is none of them did exercise on purpose, but it was more emphasized that they were pretty much moving and doing gardening and all of that. They had a clear life purpose. They had ways to reduce, stress reduction techniques, and that mostly involved being in a social environment and playing games, etc. Moderate caloric intake, meaning regardless of what they ate, they usually didn't eat to fullness, or what they call harahachibu, which in Japanese means eat about until your stomach, you feel about 3/4 full. You don't feel fully, full in your stomach. Also, they ate a plant-based diet, interestingly, because they were actually not vegan on purpose, because of course they didn't do any research, they didn't read any books. They just ate what they cultivated out of the ground, and that meant that they might eat meat once a week or so, or certainly not more than that. Moderate alcohol intake, especially wine. And I frankly think here, this usually happens once or twice a week, and it's certainly very likely that because they did it usually in a social environment, I might speculate here that their longevity was in spite of the wine, not because of it, but that's another subject. Engagement in spirituality and religion, engagement in family life, and engagement in social life. So when you think about it, almost the majority of it has to do with having a social life as well, which is being in these retreats, being in the right environment. It's such a great thing, and also why this social distancing has been so difficult for most of us. So one of the important message here to bring home is that the more closer we can get to family members, even if we might not be able to be physically now with them, have a habit of, I personally do this, in my calendar, I make sure I call one of my family members at least once a day, because that can definitely impact our health. All right, so let's move on.
What if your parents are a little crazy?
What's that?
So what if your parents are a little bit crazy?
Oh, well, what to do? And then call another. We always have someone else or a good friend. The importance is, of course, that we foster more and more communication. And in fact, Dr. Dean's Ornish program, which has been the most successful lifestyle and actually medicine intervention at that also emphasizes heart disease reversal, cancer reversal. One of the 4 pillars is actually social engagement with our loved ones in general. So that's very important to keep in mind. All right, so yeah, longevity, vitality. If there's one thing we're all looking for, it's longevity and vitality, and eating a plant-based diet definitely gives us that. Second one, mood. We all want to feel better. And a plant-based diet has, you will think we definitely associate short-term emotions with overall happiness, and that in many ways couldn't be further from the truth. Generally, anything that gives you an instant high, like most drugs, like alcohol or cigarettes, or like a candy or sugar, that definitely makes it feel more instantly better, like fast food combo. But a plant-based diet has been proven by studies to improve our mood, improve how we feel. And most of us, if not, well, actually all of us, I would say, who've been on plant-based diet can definitely report this. And I will share the science of why. But all we need to see is studies like this, that these show that restricting meat, fish, and poultry improve some domains of short-term mood state in modern omnivores. Now, how is it possible? So there are several mechanisms in terms of how this is possible, but certainly the more vegetables, especially fruits and vegetables, unprocessed foods we eat, the more reduction in oxidative stress that we have. And so what this implies is that fruits and vegetables actually have, by a factor of 60, more antioxidants. And what this will imply is that you also have less inflammation. And inflammation reaches the brain as well. You're not only inflaming your joints, you're inflaming your brain as well. And so there are also, the flip side of this is that animal protein is also very high in arachidonic acid. Oops, sorry about that. So arachidonic acid is a component that is very prevalent in animal-based products, and also other pro-inflammatory metabolites such as PGE2 and TNF-alpha. And so the more animal products you consume in your diet, the more inflammation you will have. And as you know, this is the problem, that we used to eat meat in our evolution maybe once or twice a week, because we certainly didn't have refrigerators, or we weren't able to have this readily available source of animal products. Anyway, moving here, on average, plant foods actually have 64 times more antioxidant power than animal products, okay? So this is the average breakfast, has about, in this graph here in the bottom, about 10 or 15 antioxidant units. And just a cup of blueberries has actually 500 antioxidant units. So you probably eat just a cup of blueberries in the morning versus a standard American breakfast. You already have more antioxidants than someone eating a standard American breakfast will have for the whole week, just one cup of blueberries. And so you can see there that, say, for example, bacon and eggs has about 15 units of antioxidants. A bowl of cornflakes and milk, about 30 units of antioxidants. And so again, a typical breakfast will have about 25 antioxidant units. And so AMLA, which is actually the highest antioxidant food that we know, but you can get it as a supplement, as a powder, just 1 teaspoon, you can get 750 units of antioxidants just with a teaspoon of a plant-based food. And of course, there is nothing at all in the animal world that could even match this. So this will make you happier. And I frankly think that if this is all a plant-based diet did, just keep you, add to your longevity and make you feel better, I think we could just end the presentation here and we'll be done, and that's it. But I certainly have much more for you.
Yay.
Yes. So, all right. So the microbiome, a lot of it, you've probably heard a lot about how our microbiome impacts our health. So the microbiome, and actually this is tied to the previous subject I spoke about. So the microbiome, so 70% of the serotonin, which is the feel-good neurotransmitter in your brain, is produced in your gut microbiome. So talk about the phrase, I have a gut feeling. Of course you have a gut feeling, because a lot of your neurotransmitters are actually produced in your gut, literally. So you have almost 60% of the numbers of cells in your body are actually not yours. What that means is that we have on average about 39, let's round it to 40 trillion of our bacterial of number of cells in our body are actually bacteria inside your gut. So and we have about 30 trillion of our own cells in terms of numbers. So it's about 1.3 bacteria per human cell. And this has been confirmed by studies. So you can bet that if you eat what you see on top here versus what you eat meat, there are different bacteria that produce or that process different foods. And so you can expect, of course, that it's going to produce different results. So most of you have this concept you've heard about probiotics, and so you have a supplement, a probiotic, which is beneficial bacteria, or you eat a yogurt, or you eat sauerkraut, and that's good for you. But an even more important concept for us to understand is what's called postbiotics. And what that means is that what you eat plus the bacteria that are in your gut, they will produce some products that will either be beneficial, like you can see here, or it can foster the growth of bacteria that can be pathogenic or that can cause inflammation in your system, okay? So long story short, we have over 1,000 species in our gut, but there are two main ones, Prevotella and Bacteroides. And so Prevotella are the ones that are more favored the more plant-based foods you eat, versus Bacteroides are ones that are more favored if you eat more animal products. And so they are both important in the sense, especially when you talk about evolution, because it doesn't matter if you had like an apple tree and you have a big farm of fruits, vegetables around, but of course sometimes we didn't have the benefit of satellites and climate prediction patterns for thousands of years. So you had to be able to adapt. Your gut microbiome had to adapt to eventually have to occasionally have animal products, and that's evolutionarily, that's a good thing. It takes as little as 4 days for your entire enterotype, meaning the bacteria that dominates, to shift from a plant-based diet to an animal-based diet enterotype. And so the point is that Prevotella, as a postbiotic, meaning what it will foster to secrete the more plant-based foods you eat, they secrete more short-chain fatty acids like acetate and butyrate, and they actually function to suppress inflammation and cancer. So the very lay-term way to explain this is that because it's short-chain fatty acids, means that these are fatty acids that are more malleable because they're shorter, and your body is better able to handle them, and in short terms it will produce less inflammation, like you can see there. Bacteroides, which are more foster when you eat more animal products, will actually produce higher inflammatory markers. And this is probably one of the reasons that when they've done studies and they compare native Africans, meaning the ones that still live in of course, are their native continent, versus African American, which eat a more standardized, modernized, westernized diet, the cancer risk is 50 times higher here in ones who eat a modernized diet versus the diet that's more native to African Americans, well, to Africans at that sense. So yeah, it's very important to be aware. And again, to make the long story short, it doesn't matter how fancy of a probiotic you might have, if you're not feeding your gut microbiome with the right type of foods, which are more fruits and vegetables, then you're probably fostering more inflammation that eventually will reach probably your brain as well. All right, transitioning here, we're going to talk about phytonutrients, or nature's premium multivitamin. Again, it doesn't matter how fancy of a multivitamin you might buy. It doesn't matter how fancy of a IV of vitamins or nutrients you might get. Nothing really beats the power of the hundreds of phytonutrients. And phytonutrients, what it what it simply means is our nutrients, like the words said, or expresses their phyto that are derived from plants, and you can just not get it from animal products at all. So of course you got the micronutrients. We all know there are carbohydrates, fats, proteins. And so you also have the micronutrients, which are vitamins, minerals, and then you got the micronutrients, which are, which can act as antioxidants, anti-inflammatories, immunomodulators, DNA repair, anti-cancer. And the wonderful thing is that their benefits are unique and they are exclusive, and they tend to work in a synergistic way, meaning the golden rule of to get a healthy microbiome is to eat a variety, because then you will get a synergistic effect in terms of how they interact with each other. So you got, these are classified in 6 main groups. So you have, I'm just gonna mention them because this is the subject of we can literally give a whole week seminar in terms of how phytonutrients impact you. So you got the phytosterols, and phytosterols inhibit cholesterol absorption. They modulate hormone metabolism. They modulate immune function, like you can see there. And again, I'm just not going to mention all of it, but you got the carotenoids. These probably you have heard, like when you eat carrots and when you eat any vegetable or fruit that has a yellow or orange color to it. And so these are powerful antioxidants for cancer prevention. They optimize cardiovascular function and they protect your vision. Okay, you got the phenolic groups. So dark chocolate, taking the sugar aside, but grapes, for example, they are powerful anti-inflammatory, anti-clotting, antioxidant, and also immune enhancer, etc. You got the organosulfur group, and then the organosulfur group, you have, so the sulfur, as you know, you have the onions, you have garlic, and they are potent detoxifiers, and they can reduce cardiovascular risk, and they can also be significant immune, they give you an immune boost, insignificant. As you know, you've heard that garlic and onion is good for the immune system, but also they're good for your cardiovascular system. So it's amazing that just one food that you eat has this amazing variety of effects in the body. So when you think of an orange, for example, you're only thinking of vitamin C probably. By now, that's the only thing you might, and it helps the immune system, vitamin C, and that's it. Well, no, it actually has things like terpenes, carotenoids as well, limonoids, and phenolic compounds that significantly impact your cardiovascular health, which spoke about in last time that I saw you, and we're going to talk about a little bit more in a couple of days as well. So just to bring the point home, so this, just put it jokingly, you know, Dr. Tomato. So this doctor actually did her full PhD on tomato phytonutrients. And so when you think about a tomato, you might think you barely have some, it looks like pretty boring when you see the nutrition facts of a tomato. Barely has, you know, some potassium maybe, but the rest of it doesn't look too exciting. And if you just look at the nutrition facts, you will think you only have 20 calories and some potassium, and that's it. But they've found that tomatoes actually have over 3,000 phytonutrients, and some of them have not even been identified by now. So when you're eating a tomato or when you're eating an apple, you're actually eating hundreds of phytonutrients that are working in your favor in ways that we cannot even understand nowadays. We do understand a fair amount of it, and this is probably the reason why the old adage of eat an apple a day has so much value to it. And so, for example, a tomato actually has, these are amongst the most common found on any given tomato. You get phytoin, phytofluin, beta-carotene, flavonoids, carotenoids, lycopene, quercetin, polyphenols, camphoryls, etc. So tomatoes are not only helping you because of the carotenoids prevent cancer, they're actually helping you have healthier arteries and they're actually helping you have a more stronger immune system. And again, so this is the wonders, and this is why we call it a whole food plant-based diet. And this is why the word vegan, I don't even like to use it ever, frankly, because it's not conveying necessarily. Vegan can mean, as you know, just chips and I don't know, cookies and fries and there's a lot of processed foods that can get into that. And this is important to actually eat the fruits, eat the vegetables in the whole form, because the more you process it, the more of these nutrients you will lose. Okay. So I put there, food is serious medicine. This is why I even have you. I don't get this here. Well, I'm gonna get it right here. One of the things I learned from Dr. Clapper, my mentor, is that food it's really the food. Okay, so it is really the food. It's really about eating the food, and this is why color, we evolve as our our biology. We have evolved to see the colors, and that's why colors always call out our attention. And actually, most mammals are not attracted to color in the way we are. And so this is why this picture, even though we tend to not eat food this way, this raw, it definitely calls out our attention, because back in the day, this could mean survival, because all of these beneficial effects they have on us. And those like carotenoids and the dark leafy greens are definitely, we could call it the green, the king or champions, because of all of the nutrients that they have. Okay. But a word of caution here, and it is that these are vegan, and the industry knows it, and that's why they have tricked us into putting these labels with very colored one that calls our attention. But as you know, these are devoid of fiber, and these are devoid of all of these nutrients. And this is why mainly, not only they are not healthy because they are processed, but also because they don't have these phytonutrients that are so healthy for us. So we have to be careful. This is all vegan, but not healthy, as you know. And so these companies hire these PhDs to pin down that these colors actually call out our attention, and just from the wrapper themselves, they are certainly they certainly call out our attention in that sense. So again, you cannot buy your health in a pill. You actually have to be very careful, because some of these supplements can actually not only be not as good as the fruits and vegetables, but they can actually be sometimes even dangerous. So for example, vitamin A in supplement form has been found to actually increase cancer risk. So you do have to be very careful to when you buy these multivitamin supplements, because that can get in the way of the natural forms of these vitamins to be absorbed. So they have had to stop some of these studies, because chances are that if you give too much vitamin A in supplement form, you are also impeding your cells to absorb the other nutrients that come from these fruits and vegetables. Okay. So again, you cannot buy your health in a pill, and that's a very important message to understand. All right. So I'm going to switch gears here a bit, because I want to touch bases on two important fundamentals that, as important as they are, if you don't have them, they can really be a solid base for you to make this work better in the future, or not if you don't pay attention to it. Because as important as nutrition is, if you don't sleep well, and when I say sleep well, you really need to be sleeping a solid at least 7 to 8 hours in bed, hopefully uninterrupted. And if that is not happening, hopefully this motivates you to do whatever you can to get your sleep right. Because what I've noticed is that even some folks that are really want to optimize their nutritional plan, if they're not sleeping well, it's almost impossible in many ways. And you're going to see in a short why that is the case. And so in general, we're not getting enough sleep. 2/3 of adults worldwide are not getting the 8 hours of night sleep that we should. And humans are the only species known that purposely, in a way, deprive themselves of sleep. And so what happens? even as little as 1 or 2 hours. We're not talking here about missing, putting an all-nighter, as we say, or sleeping only 2 to 3 hours a night. Studies have shown that if you sleep as little as 1 or 2 hours of sleep that you miss, the ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, is going to be significantly increased. And so your leptin, which is the fullness hormone, will be significantly decreased. Probably why? Because if you're not sleeping, your body is on the alert, and it probably meant back when we were surviving creatures in nature, if you're not sleeping well, there's something wrong. And so the body secretes more cortisol to, of course, keep you awake. Is the natural caffeine that our body has. So you certainly you actually don't need caffeine if you sleep less, because your body will naturally secrete more cortisol. And so, of course, if you're missing as little as 1 hour or 2 hours of sleep, you're setting yourself up for failure in the way. I mean, I don't want to put it that way, but it's important that we go out of our way to get a good night's sleep, because that can certainly impact the success, especially the long-term success of whatever you're trying to do. And so they have found in studies that as little as 1 hour or 2 of sleep, on average, folks will eat 300 calories more in one study. And 300 calories doesn't sound like much. It's actually about less than a cup of beans, for example. But again, on the long run, that can set you up to gain 10 to 15 pounds in a year. And also sweet cravings can be increased by actually 40%. So again, I'm bringing this point because I see this so commonly in my practice. And sometimes we take it personal. We say, I don't know, I have these sweet cravings and I think it's me. Are you sure? Are you sleeping a solid 8 hours? And for you to sleep a solid 8 hours, you actually need to be on bed for a solid 9 hours at least. So this is something simple that most, if not all of us, can make sure to increase or improve, so that then everything else also works better. Also, less sleep will equal more lean body mass loss and less fat loss compared to when you sleep, you're healthy 7 to 8 hours. And so they've done very interesting studies where even the exact same amount of calories, and folks will have much more leaner body mass at the end of the study by just sleeping more. Again, this blows your mind away. Exact same amount of calories, but you have more lean body mass and less fat mass when you sleep the proper amount of sleep that you should need to be getting. Studies have shown that sleep duration is a significant risk factor for diabetes and insulin resistance. Also, sleeping less than 6 hours a night increases your risk of heart disease by 300%, which is a lot, okay? Again, you're secreting more cortisol. You can make the connection here, as I've already taken you through the pathway here. You're secreting more cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And so no wonder that you might be in more risk of cardiovascular, and even eating a healthier diet, you will have more insulin resistance, you will have higher blood pressure. And so chances are, I also see a lot of women with irregular menstrual periods, in the irregular menstrual cycle, and those chances are it probably has to do with sleeping less than optimally. Studies have shown for men, in this case, that sleeping 5 hours a night for a week, and I think this is almost the average American nowadays, decreases testosterone by a staggering amount. It pretty much ages you by 10 to 15 years and reduces your sperm quality and quantity, which is odd because, of course, our male cultures, you just sleep 5 hours and then you wake up early and you drink a cup of coffee and you work a lot and that's what you do. But you're actually making yourself or whoever does that, decreasing your testosterone and actually decreasing your manlyhood, if you will call it that way. This is very pertinent. I'm glad that we got to here. Sleeping and the immune system. Besides eating a plant-based diet, besides doing a calorie restriction program like you're doing now there, and it's hard for me to compare the three, but right there is having a good night's sleep, okay? If and this is why you probably, when you've had a cold or in the past when you were a little kid, and you probably recall that, but when you're feeling sleepy, when you're feeling sick, your own body makes you sleepier, okay? There is a reason for that. It also makes you less hungry, and there's a reason for that, now we know. But they've made studies where a single night of 4 hours of sleep reduces your natural killer cells, which is a significant component of your immune system, by 70%. Because of course your body, again, is prioritizing its energy, and it says, well, we don't even have time to defend ourselves. Just as if you're on a low budget, as an example, you might not have the money to maybe buy a security alarm system in your home. So the same way it works with the body. If it doesn't have enough energy, the last thing the body wants to do is spending energy on the immune system, because you might not need to fender off those. And the body is taking more chances, allowing some of the bacteria and viruses to invade you, because chances are they're not going to kill you, but chances are you're also going to get chances of getting a cold. Also related to that, the immune system has to do with combating cancers. So a study showing that sleeping less than 6 hours a night increased 40% the chances of folks getting cancer, and also causes cancer to grow 200 times faster in studies in mice. There was an interesting study. I don't recall if I have it here, but so they had folks just sleep 2 hours less, and they literally put drops of the rhinovirus, which is the common cold virus, and just by 2 hours less sleep, and they had 33% increased chances of getting the cold virus versus those who just slept a normal night. And again, with all this virus that's happening around, if there's another tool that you can add to your toolbox, make sure that you are sleeping well. I'm just gonna just jump these because they are not as pertinent. Just sleeping pills, unfortunately, they just don't work. They don't help you actually sleep. They actually they are sedative agents. They don't induce the sleep cycle. The sleep cycle is a biologically active, you can call it, process in the brain that is not, so alcohol and sleeping pills do not help at all necessarily. In fact, it could be the opposite, especially if you do it long term. 12 tips to sleep better. I'm gonna probably, I saw Wayne there taking some pictures and offer it, but I'm probably gonna make sure to get a copy of this. I'm gonna be in communication with John to get a copy of all this presentation, so you have all this information. But thankfully, there are a lot of ways to improve sleep. One of them is actually being in such a nice place that you all are in right now, and I have a good envy in a way. So in any case, if there's one book I would highly recommend you read, is this one. It's called Why We Sleep. I highly recommend. And the author, Matthew Walker, he has several TED Talks and podcast episodes. I highly recommend you definitely read his or check out his material. It's the best that's out there. Right. Lastly, exercise. Again, I know it might sound so obvious to all of you. Oh, of course, I have to exercise. But if all of you in your room there are doing exercise, of course, now you shouldn't be doing exercise. Let me make a parenthesis here, because you're doing a fast. But if all of you do 30 minutes to an hour of cardiovascular exercise, especially each and every single day of the week, then you're doing what you should be doing. But chances are most of you might be doing 3 to 4 days a week, which is fine. But we really should be treating exercise in a way, and in the same way that we would treat a medicine that we should be taking each and every single day, or a supplement, which is in many ways what it is. And so a lot of my information on the next slides come from the research done by John Rady. He's a psychiatrist. And then again, I highly recommend you check out the book and the material. And so approximately, we're not getting enough exercise, only 20%. The recommended 150 minutes, which is barely about 20 minutes of exercise every day, which is not that much. And so you wouldn't guess, but for depression, for mood, and we can all just use feeling just a little better. And the first line treatment in the US, it's, of course, if you're not feeling well, they just pop a prescription. But in UK, Canada, Netherlands, actually the first line of treatment for mood problems, meaning depression and anxiety, is actually exercise. Because we know that exercise is serious treatment, if you will, for your brain health. There are many published studies that show how exercise impacts our mood. Mainly, it impacts our hippocampus, which is where we don't only retain memory, but also where emotions are dealt with. And it's generally shrunken in patients that have long-term depression. And cardiovascular exercise has been shown to promote hippocampus volume. Literally, doing exercise literally makes your brain grow, in other words, okay? The effects of aerobic exercise and hippocampal volume has been shown in several studies. So we know that any drug like alcohol and others over time actually make your brain shrink just by that amount, but exercise actually helps your brain grow in that sense. And one of the main reasons it does that, this slide might be maybe a little too small for you to read or not. You have there a big screen. But there's one molecule called Bdnf, it's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And so this is much like putting some fertilizer literally to your brain whenever you do exercise. And so it will help serotonin and norepinephrine have more optimal levels of those at the level of your brain, okay? And so significantly modulates, meaning up or down regulates all of these neurotransmitters in your brain: GABA, glutamate, serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, BDNF, okay? And so benefits brain function, not only helping with the size of your hippocampus, but also reduce inflammation, increase vascularization, increase antioxidant activity, and also energy adaptation. So GABA and glutamate, these two neurotransmitters, are responsible for 80% of the signaling in your brain, okay? So going for a run, you know, the quote unquote runner's high, is not only you're getting just a little bit of serotonin or dopamine and that's how you're feeling better. No, is that you're getting enough of these neurotransmitters in your brain. And the analogy is literally like if you will be getting a little bit of Prozac, even though you don't have depression, and a little bit of Ritalin each and every single day, that you do exercise, so that if you're all of a sudden facing a stressful challenge during the day, you have the reserves on your brain to tap into, so that you will be more alert and so that you will be more happy, if you will, okay? So again, the acute modulation of cortical glutamate and GABA by physical activity is just almost exactly the same as if you were on both Prozac and Ritalin every time you do 30 minutes of exercise every single day, okay? Now, of course, it's important, I'm talking, and some of you, it's important that you consult with your doctor, because some folks might have arrhythmias or heart problems, or might be on some medications that it's important that you consult your doctor, making sure you are in conditions to do exercise as you should. And so I think the point I already made, again, BDNF, which is regulates the process of neurogenesis, meaning it literally will make cells in your brain to grow. Just gonna go and, yeah, it's like an oxymoron because it boosts critical neurotransmitter and they also pretty much restore your mental health. The analogy I always like to use is like, imagine you have financial problems. And so I will be giving you $100 each and every single day. Now there is a catch. There's a box that's like 2 or 3 blocks down wherever you live. And then you have to go and get it. I cannot give you more and I cannot give you less per day. So meaning if you just don't go there, you won't have those $500 in your bank account. But if you do, you will accumulate those $100 each and every single day. Because the problem is that we do it inconsistently, and then we're kind of bummed that we don't have enough money, or that we're not feeling as better as we should because we're just not going there. And so same with exercise. You wouldn't be out of your mind if you have to seize this opportunity each and every single day to do exercise. And some people say, oh, I don't have money. Well, it's just you're not, or you are not feeling better. It's because you're not doing the exercise you should be doing. And so it's every day is my suggestion to go and do it. And so I have here the summary of all of this is that if you don't exercise, this is how your brain will look, kind of. And when you do exercise, you will have a healthy, strong brain. And so that is the summary of what I just spoke now. And with that, I just really wanted to bring very basic but very important points in terms of the benefits of not only a plant-based diet, but a healthy lifestyle that also emphasizes exercise and that also emphasizes proper and good amount of sleep, and the importance of getting your microbiome in its place. So yeah, that will be it for now. And we have about 10 minutes more or less, so I'm more than open to any questions in terms of, it doesn't have to do with the presentation I did today. If you have any questions of what the program you've been doing so far, I'm more than happy to answer as well.
You mentioned during your presentation that vitamin supplements can be dangerous. If somebody was to start pursuing a whole food plant-based diet, are there any type of supplements that you would recommend to be sure that you get all the nutrients and everything that you need?
Absolutely, great question. I like that question. In fact, I should have added that there, and I think I will after your feedback. So there are two essential supplements that I think anyone, not only on a plant-based diet, but on any diet, should be supplementing with, and that's vitamin B12 and vitamin D. Why I say that is that for now they say, oh, if you're eating a plant-based diet, you should be on those. Well, vitamin D, for one, is just we're usually not out and about in the sun. Generally, we're usually indoors. And so that is actually doesn't matter what diet you have or you're eating, you should be on a vitamin D supplement. B12, so B12 are produced by bacteria, not by animals. And because you're eating animals, and animals that do have bacteria, they have more vitamin B12 levels. But nowadays, animals tend to be indoors as well. So, well, sorry, I'm mixing up. Animals are also given antibiotics and are very clean environments. And so we're actually seeing a lot of vitamin B12 deficiency. So generally speaking, vitamin B12 and vitamin D are certainly essential nutrients or supplements we should all be getting regardless of diet. Also, if you are going to be on a lower sodium diet like we recommend, iodine supplement, it's also recommended, because to the regular table salt, or even if you want to keep doing salt, but you're using sea salt, for example, it won't have iodine, and iodine is important for thyroid function. Okay, so iodine is also one. Out of those three, I don't think none are essential, and especially most, if not all, pretty much multivitamins nowadays. So iron, calcium, vitamin A, and vitamin E that I already mentioned, generally not a good idea at all to be taken in supplement form unless you had a documented deficiency. Because, for example, iron can accumulate in your body, calcium as well, and cause more calcifications in your arteries. So that's why it's in general, like I already explained in the presentation, you actually are getting hundreds and hundreds of beneficial phytonutrients that's impossible for you to get from multivitamins anyway. And so, yeah, as if you're really getting your apple a day and you're a fair amount of variety, it's only vitamin D, vitamin B12, and iodine that you will need to supplement.
Yeah.
So Dr. Soler, one of the things that I wanted to share with them when we talk about like what to buy at the market or where they're going for their produce, so a lot of the research that I've looked into, and I'm just curious your opinion on this, is that a lot of the B12 that we've lost in our diet, especially plant-based folks, comes from soil deficiency and the overcropping or the overgrowing of soil. And one of the things that I'm a big proponent of and I highly recommend to people is to fully trace right back to where your food comes from. Like, and ideally, if you can go to local farms or you can find farms that are close to you with better practices in that space, a lot of the B12 that we're missing is just because the vegetables and the fruits aren't grown in soil that has that. So I'm just curious if you feel like that's a way to supplement the B12 is to be a little bit more cognizant of how your food is grown and just what the latest research suggests with that.
Yeah, it's a great point you're making there. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with soil depletion, and also that because in the past most fields have been even if some food is grown organic in the past, it might be grown in a place that in the past was not organic, and of course with a lot of contamination. But yeah, unfortunately nowadays the studies that we have is that whether you're as rich as the food or the soil might be, B12, just to be safe, because you definitely don't want to be vitamin B12 deficient, and you wouldn't ever know until it's too late, meaning once you have symptoms, well, might be too late already, not too late, but it will take a long then for you to build back up your B12 reserves. And so latest research we have is that yeah, you do need to supplement regardless of diet. But also your point is so important, because organic produce, it's been shown to have, not only it doesn't have the pesticides, but in terms of antioxidant and nutrient content, it can be, I'm forgetting the exact number, but it's probably at least 30% richer in terms of antioxidant content, and it actually tastes better too. And I think sometimes, yeah, it is a little more expensive, but you might be spending 10, 15%, who knows, even 30% more expensive, but you're investing in your health, you're investing in the environment, you're investing in these farmers that are doing it in an ethical way. And so your chances are that you're getting, yeah, it's 30% more expensive, but I think being unhealthier is much more expensive, and also chances are that you're getting your money back and more. You're getting probably 100% of, or 200%, who knows the exact percentage of benefit back. So it's just like an investment that you have a greater return on your investment, definitely. So
one more B12 question, because I know that's the most common rebuttal I feel like to the plant-based diet is like, oh, you're not going to get B12. So my two favorites are, because I don't like pills, but I like things that I can add in very simply to shake, smoothies, food that I'm eating. So chlorella and spirulina, the two like kind of powerhouse algae, I feel like those are very taste neutral, and I feel like they're really easy to get in. Are those two things that you're a proponent of? Do you like those two as supplements?
Yeah, so they might have what's called, and I might have to get back to you on this. I know the spirulina, it would not be a good one, unfortunately, because they do have B12, but what's called pseudovitamin B12, which is, it's pretty much almost the exact same structure. And I'm like you, I mean, hopefully we could just all get it fully from nature, and that's that. But yeah, it's the chlorella and spirulina studies actually show that it could actually get in, you don't get necessarily the most optimal numbers by having those even in high amounts. At least that's the latest research I was able to go through. And so unfortunately B12 remains the one thing that, forget about a plant-based diets, again as I've said, regardless of diet, everyone should be, it's just a tiny, it's usually 500 micrograms, actually 250 micrograms. It's a very tiny, fairly cheap and inexpensive, and it's a small amount we have to pay the price, because before we used to also have a lot of bacterial problems and diseases in foods in the past. So yeah, generally speaking, that will be the best of what I've seen from research. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Doc, it's Wayne. I just wanted to say that in all our classes that we've had to date, it's really nice to see how you bring sleep and exercise in with the healthy eating. I think it's like a four-legged stool, if that's the case. You need all four to get a stable position. I've made some notes. I find that's going to be very helpful for me personally.
Thank you. Really appreciate your feedback. And I guess you got to see Dr. Gregor's, hopefully you got to see Dr. Gregor's lecture yesterday. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the information about plant-based nutrition, it's out there, and I'm trying my best to just making sure we're reminding ourselves the fundamentals. And it's just like in life, sometimes we're trying to look for the fancy trick, but if we're not right there on the fundamentals, we're missing out a lot in a way. And so I just really wanted to make sure, based on my experience for years and years, I see even folks who are very health conscious, we get very motivated in the beginning and we're all doing certain things, but over time we get overconfident and we start sleeping less, we start not doing as much exercise, we stop eating the apples and only eating vegan or vegetarian, and so I really appreciate your feedback, because again, it's been my experience that if we get very close to these fundamentals, that's where things really starts to happen for all of us. So appreciate it.
Awesome.
Is there any more questions? Audio. Thank you so much, Doctor. Appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, I'm missing you all. So thank you. I'm already missing a lot of spring, but hopefully we'll get a chance to see you all as soon as possible. And well, hopefully this help, and I'll see you in a couple of days, Thursday.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right. See you later. Bye.